a lot of people have said it before, and I think yeah, this is definitely probably going to happen and really be true. That the breakup of the UK is really on the cards. It's the last vestiges, I suppose, of the British Empire, and empires don't they don't die in a single night. They normally take about 100 years or roughly thereabouts to really fall to pieces. I mean, all the colonies, you can officially say what the last colony we had was, what, 1997, even though I think we still do have a couple of few thereabouts around the globe, but they're nothing to what we used to hold on to. And of course, the wealth that used to generate this country, which is what a lot of people still can't get their heads over, which is why we were such a strong power. Um, but I think this article raises a very, very interesting question. Because where will that breakup occur? Because we've had, in really recent history, especially in the 90s, you had Yugoslavia on one hand and Czechoslovakia on the other hand. And it's, where do we fall on that spectrum? Is it going to be, Czechoslovakia that was the peaceful breakup of the country, or Yugoslavia, where it was incredibly violent and a civil war in many countries? Um, but we don't know where we fall on that spectrum. Many things obviously do play into this part, so I'm not instantly saying there's going to be a civil war, but you know, you never know. Just as in you look back to all the civil wars that have happened from, the American Civil War, no one expected war to really break out. Even back to the English Civil War, no one expected Parliament and the King to come to blows and to be actual open warfare. That civil wars don't just happen, they happen almost by accident, and that's generally seems to be the case. If you look at the historical case for many of the civil wars that happened to many countries. But anyway, we'll get into this article because I think this is really, really good. So, this is from politics.co.uk, and it is: the breakup of the UK is coming, but will it be violent or peaceful? So, between 1991 and 1995, two multinational states fell apart. Yugoslavia broke up in a civil war which killed over 150,000 people. While Czechoslovakia broke up peacefully following referendums in both of its constituent parts. After such uh, after such um, after such state now faces the prospect of doing the same, the United Kingdom. However, the question has to be asked: how might it happen? Where does the UK lie on the spectrum, where one end is Yugoslavia and the other is Czechoslovakia? If you agree with the late Roger Sutton that we are, quote, a settled people, and think it matters that few people in the UK are into gun ownership, where they are so clearly at the Czechoslovakia end of that question, is observed. But it is also worth remembering that in April of 1992, with the war over Croatia underway, Bosnian Muslims, Croats, and Serbs demonstrated in Sarajevo to tell the world that the same could not happen there. They were wrong. And for the next 3 years, the worst men in Bosnia did what the worst men everywhere do. If a train of events happens under the right structural conditions. In Bosnia, those conditions included two religious and geopolitical fault lines, one between Christian and the Islamic worlds, the other between the Catholic and the Orthodox Christian worlds. And they were not the accident, and they were not the, quote, ancient hatreds too many talked about, but they did assert themselves in a way outside states backed one side or the other. Bohemia used to fall on a fault line of its own, the Catholic Protestant one, that plunged Central Europe into the 30 Years' War. But by 1992, these plates had long stopped rubbing against one another, In any case, the Czechs, the most secular people in Europe, had no interest in holding on to the poorer and more religious Slovakia. Parliamentary votes in each showed a majority for separation. The UK has a Catholic Protestant fault line too, in Northern Ireland. It was active for over 30 years and killed over 3,500 people, equivalent to just 200,000 for the UK as a whole. 2 decades on from the Good Friday Agreement, the people of Northern Ireland don't want to revisit that nightmare, which means that if there is a no-deal Brexit, Northern Ireland becomes a smuggler's paradise in January, and we've talked about that before, which again is shocking that we are contemplating that happening. A border poll later in the decade may well see both parts of Ireland agree, if not exactly as amicably as the Czechs and Slovaks agreed to part, to unite in a new sovereign member of the European Union. Remarkably, the people of the rest of the UK will have no say in the matter. Moreover, many of the leading English Brexiteers will accept the vote for Irish unity. The Northern Ireland Protocol and the Internal Market Bill are meant to keep Northern Ireland in the UK for now. But if push comes for shove, they will let it go without a fight. Contrary to the current talk of British Empire and the nostalgia around it, there are no power lights. Their overriding concern instead is the restoration of the Westminster system. For them, our EU membership has been an historical paralysis. Westminster, all a century ago, ceding part of Ireland, was a price worth paying for the keeping of the Westminster system intact. So was the loss of India and the loss of the colonies in the 1950s and the early 1960s. Today, next year, whenever, Northern Ireland will follow. The more troubling question is whether the Brexiteers see Scotland the same way, and whether their view of Scottish independence is the same as that of Unionists south and north of the border. Scotland is a nation of the United Kingdom, not a province that can be snapped off and tacked onto another state. It can only become sovereign by becoming independent and sovereign. And the stakes are much higher. The Internal Market Bill recognised this graver prospect and has used the uncertainties around Brexit to give ministers renewed powers to make strategic decisions about the whole of the UK that the current devolved settlement disallows. Ed Miliband referred to this power grab before anything else in his contribution to the debate on the bill in the House of Commons, and the SNP's Ian Blackford immediately intervened to thank him. Boris Johnson hasn't added "hang on to your Scots." It's going to be a rough ride to his list of the off-the-cuff rallying cries, but it might be one for his motto for the remainder of his premiership. For English Unionists, Scotland is everything Northern Ireland has never been, an indispensable, integral part of the Westminster system, and this makes Edinburgh's cultivation of a social democratic, grown-up continental European political culture all the more difficult to bear. The Irish comedian Darragh O'Brien once referred to Glasgow as Belfast Light, but the more important Catholic-Protestant divide concerns geopolitics and modes of governance. The geopolitical divide is centuries old, the tectonic plates large. Some of the most prominent Brexiteers, like the hardcore Anglican Steve Baker, know this and see the EU to which Scotland aspires to belong to as a Roman Catholic project. That project's mode of governance is not the centralised one, and the less intellectual Brexiteers constantly moan about, but actually about subsidiary decisions being made at the most local feasible level. By contrast, the heart and distinctiveness of the Westminster system is its centralisation. Scottish nationalists believe that Scotland would be freer to act autonomously within a federal, decentralised European Union than they were with a devolution inside a unitarian state. The EU's response to Scottish overtures immediately after the 2016 EU referendum was sympathetic. To date, though, Boris Johnson has ruled out any further referendums on Scottish independence. By the same token, Edinburgh would be reluctant to declare independence unilaterally, though some would like to push Nicola Sturgeon in that direction. When the government of Catalonia did this, it was met with an immediate crackdown by Madrid, which the EU backed. We have not reached that stage yet, but the prospect of a no deal is still with us, and thus a hard border on the British mainland between England and Scotland. The EU may be less keen, at least officially, to encourage Scottish independence than it was 4 years ago. None of that is an argument against Scottish independence. The point is this: Croats, Serbs, Russians and Ukrainians, Russians and Georgians, Armenian and Azeris, they have no more desire to harm each other than they do the various nations of the UK do. They did so because of institutional structures and modes of governance that prevent conflict were not in place, or because the politicians who ruled them were unable or unwilling to understand and manage the geopolitical forces greater than themselves. So think seriously about the future of the UK. Involves thinking seriously about Yugoslavia and the Czechoslovakia spectrum. And at what point in our current modes of governance and crop of politicians are we going to place ourselves on that spectrum? So as you can see, and as was said there, people back during the breakup of Yugoslavia and the war in Croatia, people did protest that can never happen there, but it did. So never say never. Who knows where you think? I'd be interested to know where you think that spectrum will lie. I'd be very interested to think what you think. Will it be a peaceful breakup of the UK? Will it become a violent one? If you think it will become a violent one, why do you think it will devolve into violence? I'd like to get your views, on that, because I think it'd be an interesting topic to really talk about. But with that, please do hit that like and that share button, and of course if you are new, welcome to the channel. We do talk a lot about British politics and other happy happenances on our island, including Brexit, because that old thing's going to be with us for quite some time. And of course down below are links to my Patreon page as well as a one-off donation link should you like to support the channel in that way. And so with that said, thanks for watching and we'll see you all next time.